the USL Championship. Time for USL Championship Week here on SDH. And our guest right off the top, Executive Vice President from the USL, Court Jeske, friend of the show, friend of the network, and it'll be good to catch up with Court and find out everything that is going on in the USL Championship. Court Jeske joining us. Court, it is Jason, it is John. Thanks for hanging out here on SDH.
Jason, John, thank you so much for having me. I think it's really important that we start off and clarify one thing.
Yes.
Mountain Time Zone is by far the best time zone to live in and watch games from. So
okay.
you get the kickoff time so that those early games are done around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then your West Coast games keep you up until 10. I heard you guys talking about it last hour, and it's just, in my 4 years living in Denver, was really ideal for sports viewing. Now I go to bed earlier, so maybe that works for me, but I thought it was an intriguing conversation, so I just wanted to get out where I stand on that.
Very important.
That's our first vote for the Mountain Time Zone in all of this, and all the reading of the promos, Court. Very good.
Thanks for having me on today, guys. Good morning.
Morning. So you look at the 2021 season here in the USL Championship. 2020 was one of the most challenging, I'm sure, that you've had as an executive, regardless of where you've been. How challenging was it for the USL Championship to get through 2020?
Look, 2020 was extraordinarily difficult. But I tell people this all the time. It was also our best year. It was our 10th season in the championship. It was our second season of League One. And our clubs rose to the occasion. You know, I'm not sure if USL version 1.0 in 2013, 2015, even 2016 or 17 would have survived the pandemic. But our clubs came through. The owners and leaders of the clubs came together, decided to return to play at a time when lots of other leagues were closing the door. And I think it's important to clarify, we often got criticized that it was just for money. Well, it wasn't for money. It actually cost us more to play with no fans in the stands than it did if we had just closed up shop. But we felt it was the right thing to do for our communities, the right thing to do for our players, and the right thing to do for the entire soccer movement in this country. So we played through it, and I think we accelerated our growth in those cities where maybe we were the only game in town because everything else was shut down when we returned to play early July last year. So without question, extremely challenging, but also extremely successful as our league continues to grow.
Court, tell us a little bit about that growth over the last decade, because I think it's one of the most impressive stories in American soccer history. From where USL was when the championship launched to now, I'm with you. I don't know if earlier iterations would have survived a pandemic in the same way. What was it that took USL from 10 years ago to now that gave them the ability to survive?
Yeah, I think the first thing I have to do is give a lot of credit to two of our leaders of this edition, both Georgia residents, by the way, up until a point for some of them, but our chairman, Rob Hoskins, and CEO, Alec Papadakis, that took over the USL movement in 2010, added a lot of professionalism, a lot of business acumen, and then began a path of expansion that included forging a partnership with MLS. It began bringing more sophisticated ownership groups and markets into the fray. And groups that wanted to invest in stadiums, invest in training facilities and academies, you name it. And so their leadership really through some very thin years and some lean years got us to a point that I feel like a real inflection point. And keep in mind, I was working at MLS from 2009 to the end of 2016 when I moved to Nashville. So we had good visibility on this. About 2015, 2016, after Sacramento had seen some success, Cincinnati had seen wild success, the soccer nation started to wake up a little bit to the fact that this is its own brand of soccer. It's different than MLS, and that's okay. It serves its community well. That's why we're there. And then things really began to move forward at a rapid pace and accelerate with new broadcast deals, hopefully a players agreement signed later this year. Lots of fun things on the horizon on the business side and the technical side. But it was those early lean years that really paved the way for the success we're seeing with our 43 clubs today.
Well, and you're also going into markets, in the last handful of years where you're really exposing. A lot of folks would sit there and just at first glance, if they're not familiar with soccer in the United States, I think that the USL Championship is exposing the rest of the country to great soccer markets, like we're seeing with Louisville and what we're seeing with the growth at Lynn County Stadium. And you're seeing El Paso and New Mexico and Vegas and San Diego coming online. I think that what the USL Championship's getting to do is showcase the country to the rest of the country, I guess, for lack of a better way to phrase it.
That's a great point. And a couple things that I'd like to talk a little bit about. One is exactly how you phrased it, or I'll phrase it slightly differently. But we help cover the map with pro soccer. And with a country with 325 million people, with more buying power than Europe, there is absolutely no reason that professional soccer should be limited to 25, 27, 29 MLS teams in less than that number of markets, right? Because you have overlap in LA and in New York and in Canadian teams. So we fill that puzzle piece because for soccer to reach its potential in this country, there has to be professional and women's soccer opportunities in places like El Paso and San Antonio and Tampa and Indianapolis. If not, we're not going to be able to achieve our vision. And one way, think about it this way. I know there's a lot of soccer aficionados and people that are deep in the game that follow and listen to you guys. But I would give you guys this proposal here. One way that we've started to talk about USL, again, it's just a different brand of soccer. Yes, it's second division. There's no question MLS is first division and is going to be the top league in this country. But think about it almost like the way you do the NFL and college football. So together, the NFL and college football make up the mosaic that Americans know as football, right? They live in their own cities by and large. They serve their own communities, whether you're in Athens, Georgia, or you're in Norman, Oklahoma, my alma mater, Oklahoma. Those are very relevant sports entities in the sport of football, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the Falcons and the Cowboys are also very relevant. Together with MLS, we can cover that map. And so I propose to people listening here, think of the USL not as minor league, which we often get called, but think of it as the college football of soccer in this country. We're just servicing a different community with a different brand.
That's a great way to look at it. I love that analogy because, one of the biggest things I've said for years as I've been involved in the game is there's not anything in the water that would prevent a kid being born in Birmingham, Alabama from becoming a professional soccer player than if they're born in Atlanta. It's just access. And that's why the Birmingham Legion are so critical to that. One of the biggest initiatives that I think USL is starting to undertake is that player development side. And it's been so exciting to see players get their start in the championship, get their start in League One, and continue to progress and find their top level. Is player development becoming a bigger element of the strategy for USL?
Absolutely. If we're going to play on the global stage, right, and be one of the most relevant leagues in the world, period, it starts with the quality of our player. And that's no secret. And so, again, I alluded to the fact that we're working very diligently with the USLPA and the Players Association to get some certainty there that will work for everyone. And that has been a very positive conversation. So we'll have that piece in place that this is a good environment for professionals to apply their trade. Then we also have to make sure, to your point, that we're raising great players in places like El Paso and Tulsa and Des Moines and Tampa, that as they're 8, 10, 12, 14, they have the ability to play. And that's where our academy system comes in. And the nearly 80, 90 clubs that now are committed to the USL Academy vision, which allows them to travel less and play more. And in the cases that they're good enough, this is the piece that really excites me that our technical folks are working on. It allows them to play up. So if you're a 15, 16-year-old kid in Birmingham, it might not make sense for you to move to Atlanta or Nashville or Dallas to be in an MLS academy. Maybe your family can't support that. It's not the right lifestyle. It's not good for your personal development. There's a lot of reasons that being able to play with the Birmingham Legion on a professional stage is of extreme value for development in this country. So we have a saying that we use, which is, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So we should be defining those players in this country not by what age group they're in, but how can they play? How can they play up? When can they deliver?
And one of the other aspects, Court, of the growth of the league is, you mentioned it briefly, is the new TV agreement. And I want to get your perspective on this, where you're adding the international component to it now, where folks can watch the USL Championship. You're now getting the linear TV aspect added to it, whether it's League One or the USL Championship. It's another big piece where, you mentioned the college football analogy. College football junkies will find that game, and they will watch that game wherever they can find it. Now the USL Championship and the USL are getting that opportunity to get to the junkies, whether it's internationally, linearly, or with the relationship that you guys already have with ESPN+.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's an excellent point. And look, any mature professional sports league has to have a media partner that supports it. And so our friends at ESPN and ESPN Plus have been phenomenal supporters of USL going back to 2015, some of those early days. But we're really excited this year with 19 games across ESPN, ESPN2, and Deportes. We now have a regular platform on linear, but even more so where we really see a following and where we see engagement is through the ESPN Plus app. And again, we've got a younger audience. We've got younger fans than a lot of other sports and leagues in this country. Go back to our Birmingham example, they want to engage with their local professional soccer team. And so ESPN Plus makes it very easy to do so, whether it's on your handheld device, your iPad, your smart TV, right? It's the way the world is going. So they have been instrumental to our growth. And I would say, with the international expansion we've had the last couple of years, as I talk to our owners and our board, I think it's really interesting when you think about the cities and communities we're in being broadcast around the world now, that we have, Caribbean, Central American, South American matches that are on. So, a kid growing up in any of those countries or territories I mentioned would be flipping through their device or their television and see USL is really kind of mind-boggling if you think about the infancy stage we were at 5 or 6 years ago. So all of this contributes to growth, right? But it starts with a good vision. It starts with clear goals that the organization has, and then relying on our partners in the marketplace to amplify that for us. So we're really, really delighted to be with ESPN, ESPN Plus, and our fans seem to find a lot of value in that subscription as well.
Court, what are some of your favorite storylines in the USL Championship season this year as we're starting to get into the first few weeks of the year? What are some of the storylines you'll be watching to develop?
Gosh, the thing that jumps out at me is now we finally have cross-conference play. So we've got some really intriguing matches that in previous editions of USL wouldn't have happened because the Eastern Conference played the East and the West played the West. But now we have things like we'll have next weekend where Phoenix gets to come to Tampa and finally get to play that championship game that didn't happen in October because of COVID, right? And so we've got some more matchups like that. New conference alignments provide those. And just the overall growth of our brands, I think lend itself to rivalries, right? So San Diego and Sacramento now getting more mature. We saw Phoenix and San Diego last Friday night as our ESPN2 opener. Really spark a great atmosphere and a great crowd. So these rivalries will continue. We'll highlight the ones for all the fans out there on linear, but they're happening every weekend. But for me, that cross-conference play really brings some new fun matchups to the table.
Well, and also one of the aspects we've been talking about growth in the USL Championship. Obviously, in League One, there was news out of Spokane that happened yesterday with the okie dokie on the new stadium. You're getting teams that are investing in their local markets. Colorado Springs, they now have their new stadium, and you're seeing these projects coming online. And I think it's another stage that the USL Championship can add to its dossier, where you have teams that are staying at home. They're staying there for they're staying there for years, and now they're investing in building their own stadia where it's bigger and better than it was before.
Yeah, without question, the communities, the leadership, our owners themselves are seeing USL. It was first a place to play. Now it's a place to stay, right? And you brought up Colorado Springs. That's going to be a beautiful downtown soccer-specific stadium that the ownership group in Colorado Springs has invested nearly $50 million in. This is a great place to play, not just for the Switchbacks in Colorado Springs, but for national teams, our own, women's competitions, CONCACAF competitions, etc. But we've got these popping up all across the country at the championship level. Oklahoma City has been approved. We mentioned Phoenix already with a new stadium. And many more in the pipeline. Charlotte moves into a new stadium downtown. So there's lots of intriguing storylines. But then, as you mentioned, Spokane in League One, these cities of 300,000-400,000 all the way up to 1 million, 1.5 million, they are getting in the game, and they're getting excited to have pro soccer in their market. And just take that example right there, Spokane, and we worked very hard with the municipality there to get this across the line. But of course, Gonzaga is a big deal. But now they're going to have a professional soccer club. I assume, with the stadium in place, we'll get all the other pieces aligned. They have the ability to have a pro soccer club that they can root for. And Spokane can play the Seattle Sounders. They can play a Liga MX team. They can play FC Barcelona. They're part of the global pyramid. And that gives a lot of relevance to Spokane and the city and the brand that they get to build. So there's really fascinating stories coming across, not only in Championship, but League One, that we've got on the horizon that should excite the soccer fan in the U.S.
Court, we can't thank you enough for the time, carving out some time of your busy schedule. I think the work that USL is doing doesn't get enough hype around the soccer nation. You guys are bringing the game to some of these cities that, in Spokane, you could have the next Josie Altidore, DeMarcus Beasley, Michael Bradley, John Harkes, Tab Ramos. You could have that next player come out of a Spokane, out of an Omaha, out of New Mexico because of the work you guys are doing. So thank you for everything you're doing, and thanks for taking some time for us.
No, thank you guys as well. Love the show. It's always a pleasure to come on. Regardless if I'm in Nashville or Tampa, always good to chat, and I appreciate what you guys are doing as well. Please stay well during the pandemic. Stay safe. And
you too.
If anyone is listening on Thursday here, we continue with our schedule tonight. We've got San Diego traveling to RGV in Texas, a nationally televised game on ESPN Deportes, so don't miss it.
John, you're muted.
Excellent plug, Court. I sit there and I'm trying to sit there and just promote the fact that you plugged the daylights out of it, did well with topicality, and I had the mute button on. Goodness gracious. Court, thanks for hanging out with us one more time.
Thanks, guys. Be well.
You too, Court.
Oh, me and the mute button, my best friend. I just can't get past that.
Well, you need to, because we got other things to talk about in the USL Championship.
So
as
I'm
part
not
of
muting off for the rest of the segment. How about that?
Yeah, don't do that. Power rankings released by USLChampionship.com. No changes in the top 5. Tampa Bay, Phoenix, El Paso, Lou City, and San Antonio. Tulsa jumps up a little bit. 2 wins in 2. That's a team that's in Atlanta United 2's region. Indy 11 jumps up a good bit. With their win in difficult field conditions in Birmingham. They move up to 7. Sacramento stays at 8. The Miami FC, is 9th after a nice win over Loudoun United. And Rio Grande Valley, who's in action tonight against San Diego, they make the biggest jump, the first season opening victory in the club's history over New Mexico, who's a team that a lot of people rate very highly. Rio Grande is kind of going through a little bit of a change. They're not quite as tied into the Houston Dynamo. They're still working together, but it is not run exactly as a second team. It was a little bit of a hybrid anyway because they weren't in the same market, but now it's less of a hybrid, and it's more of an independent team, and they get that season opening win over New Mexico. They move into that top 10. Stories out in the West. Santiago Patino is a player who was with Orlando City. He goes to San Antonio and has a hat trick in their opener against Colorado Springs. That's the other element of what USL Championship and USL League One do for American soccer in my mind. Santiago Patino didn't get opportunities in Orlando. You've had players like Kyle Larin. You've had players like Daryl Dike. You've had players who are playing in that position who are going to beat him out. Does that mean he can't be a professional soccer player? Absolutely not. There are places you can find and make a good living at it and continue to grow as a player. And, hey, maybe get that opportunity to come back into the first division later after showing what you can do on a regular basis. The USL Championship and USL League One is critical for guys who maybe don't get the door open to them in MLS and can drop down and play and grow.
And you look at some of the other matchups that are coming up this week. Red Bulls 2 at Montclair. They're hosting Charleston on Friday. Sporting Kansas City 2, they get OKC Energy. OKC Energy, remember, they lost to Atlanta United 2 at Taft last weekend, 1-0, so they'll be looking to rebound off of that. Indy 11 is going to be hosting Tulsa. We talked about Birmingham Legion in the segment with Court. Birmingham Legion goes on the road to Lou City for a very tough matchup for them coming out of the blocks. Tampa Bay's hosting Pittsburgh. Hartford's at the Miami FC. Real is at San Antonio. New Mexico and El Paso, 2 of the markets that we talked about with Court Jeske just a second ago. It's going to be at 9:30 on Saturday night. And Phoenix hosting Oakland Roots. And it'll be good to see Oakland Roots come online and see what they're going to be like in USL Championship. Los Dos hosting Tacoma on Sunday. So that's a look at some of the matchups. We actually have juice boxes for the matchups tonight and tomorrow. Rio Grande Valley. And for those that remember Wilmer Cabrera and his time in MLS, that's where Wilmer is coaching this year. He's at Rio Grande Valley. Rio Grande Valley, a slight favorite, hosting San Diego Loyal at a plus 137. San Diego's at plus 165. Your draw's at about plus 250. And Charleston is a big road favorite going to Montclair to take on Red Bulls 2. They are at a minus 135. Sporting Kansas City 2 is a plus 121, hosting Oklahoma City Energy on Friday at plus 148. So it's juice boxes that we get to look at as well when it comes to the USL Championship.
Yeah, one of the other big stories in the first week was the Indy-Birmingham match. First off, Indy, I think, was really impressive. A.J. Cochran, who people will remember from his time with Atlanta United 2 in 2018, moves over to Indy with veterans like Ouimet and Hackshaw. It's a good defensive group for Indy 11. Birmingham had 2 shots inside the area. J.J. Williams was sent off. He's been suspended. Junior Flemings is still suspended. So Birmingham's going to struggle a little bit as they go to Lou City next week. Indy is showing that, hey, maybe they can be a contender in the East. The other storyline was this thing with the field conditions. And Birmingham Legion and Jay Heaps, their GM, issued a statement. We are extremely disappointed with the condition of the field tonight. We were assured by the UAB athletic department and the UAB grounds crew that the field would be ready for the first game of the season after transitioning the surface from ryegrass to Bermuda grass. Unfortunately, the field was not ready and nearly unplayable. I don't know the terms of their partnership or how all that works. I know they've worked together on expanding the stadium there, and I know there's been at least whispers of them moving into a new football stadium with UAB, which would be bigger. I was kind of blown away by the statement. I was blown away by the conditions of the field, but I'm a little blown away by the statement because I don't know what's gone wrong in this right now, but that surprised me that it got to that point. No,
and when I went to Birmingham and when Atlanta United supporters went to Birmingham to see the preseason activities with Birmingham Legion and Atlanta United, you didn't have the dust because it had rained all the way through, and there were drainage problems with the pitch, and it was really, really difficult on that other extreme to play on short notice with drainage problems. And so now you have the drainage problems, and then you add the transition of the grass to where it turns into, I guess, for lack of a better phraseology here, almost like a dust bowl where you have dust kicking up. And so it's it's not an optimistic situation right now between UAB and Birmingham Legion, and you want to see the relationship continue to grow, especially if they're going to look to move into the new football stadium that's being built for UAB as the next stage in this relationship. But that's definitely not the way to start things off for the season if you're having issues with the turf after a transition of a build.
A couple of quick questions on Atlanta United too. They're off this weekend. KFC asked if Mackie Jope was injured last weekend. He has been injured. I'm not sure where he is in terms of recovery. He was on the bench for Game 1 in Louisville. I don't know if he actually could have participated much at all. I don't know. Last weekend, you also saw a number of first-team players make that trip because they needed those minutes. That could have affected it, too, if Mackie is not 100%. So he's been recovering. I just don't know where he is in that recovery, and sometimes you get those fluctuations when first-team players come down and need to get some time. Burned asked where Atlanta United 2 was in the power rankings from the league. They're 24. Feels a little low for me. They were very low at the start of the season, which I can understand. I thought it was a good win for them in Oklahoma City. They ended up finding the way to get it done after some good performances in the first 45. It's a lot of the kids who were involved in creating the breakthrough. It's Brendan Lamb, it's Will Riley, it's Coleman Gannon, and Philip Goodrum slots at home. A really good win. They go back to Oklahoma next weekend, and we will not be on the call for that because it's a road game. We will be on the call for the first home game, but we will do a watch-along for the Twos game because it doesn't conflict with the first team for the first time all season. So we will have a watch-along on twitch.tv/soccer down here for the Twos' second match in Oklahoma City. And that concludes the USL Championship Weekly Block.